All right, in a surprise move, LIV announced yesterday that they're going to be pivoting to 72-hole events, moving from the 54-hole structure, which has sent shockwaves through the entire fan community, with some people saying they love it, some people saying they hated it. But the question we have is this just a move to get official world golf rankings? And if it is, does it guarantee that that will happen? But taking that even one step further, a lot of people are now wondering, is this a move of strength or weakness for LIV Golf? On one side, you have people saying, hey, these are guys, they're a startup, they're adapting, they're doing what they need to do to make this league survive. And on the other side, people are saying, well, look at this. Now they're bucking one of the biggest parts of their original structure. This was a league that is supposed to be faster, louder, and now it's starting to slowly sound more and more like the PGA Tour that so many players just left. So we're going to dive into this. We're going to see what this really means for the league and those fan reactions, as well as reactions directly from the player, because undoubtedly this is the biggest news to come out of LIV in quite some time. And what is so astonishing is how quickly it takes effect. This is in effect immediately for the 2026 season for every single event. So it happened fast, it happened loud, and we've got a lot to talk about. First, of course, we want to thank this week's sponsor, Titleist. And guys, Titleist is always looking for ways to help you shoot lower scores. And of course, as you guys know, the golf ball you play can make a big difference. So Titleist Alignment Integrating Marking, or AIM, are alignment lines precisely printed on your Titleist golf ball. Both AIM Performance and AIM Enhance are available on the Pro V1, Pro V1X, and Pro V1X Left Dash. So here's the difference. AIM Performance is a tour-inspired 105-degree line, which is available in black, red, blue, or pink. And AIM Enhance is a distinctive 3-line alignment design. And Mike, I just saw you putting these into play.
In Brooklyn, I was playing with that alignment.
Absolutely. And it's incredible how much it can help you really line up those putts and even lining up some shots off the tee.
Absolutely.
So it's something that you guys have to go out and try. You got to try them to appreciate them. Go and check out the Titleist website. That's the best way to first get familiar with them. I say pick up a sleeve and just see, does it help improve your aim? It's definitely something that's tour inspired, and it's something that has really translated into the amateur game as well. So go and check that out. So I have to ask you first, before we dive into these quotes, Mike.
Yeah.
Were you surprised when you saw the news just break seemingly out of nowhere yesterday?
Well, I wasn't. I mean, what really kind of kept the surprise low for me was the Dustin Johnson signing. I kind of felt like him re-signing to LIV, a big name like that, kind of showed me something was coming. And I kind of felt that it was something like this. Now, we've talked like a million times about their world rankings getting rejected because they're not a 72-hole event. So it was almost like that was going to be the one. That was going to be the big news, I think. And I think the world ranking has not been announced yet, like you said, right? They didn't get approved for that yet.
Oh, absolutely
This is just step one. Right. But no, I'm not surprised. I knew it was kind of coming, and I think you kind of had the thought last week.
Well, I didn't. I'll be honest, I never saw this particular part coming, but I did say last week on the podcast that my prediction is that
that's right.
They get the official world golf rankings by the Masters. Now I feel even more, confident in that prediction. Now I really think that it might be even a sooner timeline than by the Masters. What I didn't see was this specific change, because we made the whole case last week saying how there are still plenty of other 54-hole events and 54-hole feeder leagues that get official world golf rankings. There's still ways that we believe that you can equitably ranked without making this big change. We've also seen LIV showing even more pathways into the league with more qualifying events, which was another big hang up for official world golf rankings. So I don't think that they absolutely needed to make this move, but I think it's one of those things where now they're putting those cards on the table and be like, deny us now, official world golf rankings. How are you going to deny us? Right. So I think the writing's on the wall. I think my prediction is going to come true. I think it's inevitable, but I think there's other reasons for this, do this too, which we're going to dive into, including the fact, and so you'll see some of this evidence in some of these quotes we're going to talk about in a second, but as the league continues to grow, if it is true that the growth that they're promoting and saying, then from a business standpoint, why would you not add another round where you can have more viewership to sell more ads on the broadcast, where you can have more that you can sell to potential sponsors, adding a fourth day? Like, if something's successful, why would you not grow it? Like, are you selling yourself short by having only 3 days of competition where there could be a 4th day of revenue. Even on site, ticket sales, another day of ticket sales,
Right.
another day of concessions, another day of merch. So in a lot of those ways, but in order to do it, they almost had to have a little bit of a reckoning because they have to kind of go 180 on one of the things that made LIV what it was and unique is a 54-hole layout. I will say there's other things that are remaining unchanged. The shotgun start, as of right now, remains unchanged.
Sure.
It'll still be a shotgun start. They're just moving to 72-hole format.
Do you think that, I know there was some player reactions, a lot of it seemed positive. We'll dive into some quotes.
Yep.
But a lot of the people at the start, a lot of players that went over, jumped ship, were talking about how this would make life easier for them. They liked the 3 rounds. It was less work, so to speak. So are they on board, or do you think
that's a great question? And that goes into the bucket of so many people, which we're going to talk about even more extensively in a second. But people are saying now it's just sounding these 2 leagues, LIV and the PGA Tour, which have, it's really been so separate, are sounding more and more similar.
Yeah.
And you're right, a lot of people said they were moving over to LIV for the lighter schedule, for 3 rounds and stuff like that. And now it's going the other way. So let's read some of these responses. So the first thing came directly from Scott O'Neill, who, of course, is the new CEO of LIV, taking Greg Norman's place. And interestingly, I wonder, we talked about this last week, if it took that change in leadership for these things to happen. You had a guy like Greg Norman, who was so dug in on the initial structure of LIV. I feel like it would have been harder for him to make this announcement and walk back 54 holes to 72 because of how dug in he was on it. Having a fresh face, I think, allows it to be a little bit more natural. But what Scott O'Neill said was, as we enter our 4th season as a league, the move to 72 holes marks a pivotal new chapter for LIV Golf that strengthens our league, challenges our elite field of players, and delivers more of the world-class golf, energy, innovation, and access our global audience wants. So in a way that he's saying, like, look, this is showing that we're going to adapt to give people more, and it's saying people are enjoying what they're seeing, so let's give them more. We also saw a statement directly from the league saying, for each regular season event, the individual competition will be decided over 72 holes of stroke play, while the team competition will continue to run concurrently with each team's cumulative individual stroke play scores determining the team's result. Central to LIV Golf's identity and offering, the shotgun start remains, ensuring the condensed, faster-paced event experience embraced by players and fans. The format for the season-ending team championship will be announced at a later date.
Okay.
So I think that's their way of kind of saying, like, hey, we're still retaining what makes us unique, this faster, louder type of thing. But it also kind of tips the hand of saying, like, how fast and reactionary this was, because they're rolling it out. They're not saying in 27 we're doing this.
Right.
They're doing this effective immediately with the schedule. I even looked on LIV's website. This announcement happened so fast, they hadn't even adjusted the tournament dates yet. There were still 3-day tournaments on the schedule. So it does make me wonder if behind the scenes, they are so close to official World Golf Rankings that they need to pull this trigger to give official World Golf Rankings enough time to do what they need to do to roll it out on their end to meet a certain timeline. It feels very fast and very reactionary.
As you're talking about this, I think your prediction's going to pay off. I think those world rankings are coming.
You still think by the Masters, like I said?
No, yes. Now even sooner, like you said.
You never know.
It could be the beginning of the year.
January.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So that's interesting. But here's the thing. Let me ask you this. This is kind of a strange question. But do you think now LIV has, with 4 rounds, the ability to kind of one up the PGA Tour, having globalization, like global eyeballs, and the team aspect?
But in which way? Things. One up them in which way?
Like, it offers viewers and fans something different. The PGA Tour just has straight tournaments. There's no team aspect, and you're not watching it in Australia and all around the
world. Right. Look, I definitely think that LIV's biggest strength is its global component. And I think that is something that differentiates them. I still think that was a hole that the PGA Tour needed to fill, and as it wasn't getting filled, LIV stepped in to do it. And I'll keep using the same example I talk about so often. Take a place like Australia, a continent that's hungry for golf and just was not getting that appetite fed from the PGA Tour. And LIV came in and stepped in and said, we'll do it, and reaped the benefits of it. So I still do think that's a huge differentiator.
And now they're going to get a 4th round. Australia.
Exactly.
You know?
And
So-
again, coming back to, as I said before, if you're selling like the big ticket sales that we saw in Australia, why, as a business, why would you not tack on a fourth day and sell another? You know, it could be millions in additional revenue.
Yep.
So talk about some of these player reactions as well. And it seems like across the board, all of them are on board with it. John Rahm, first one, he said, "This is a win for the league and the players. LIV Golf is a players' league. We are competitors to the core, and we want every opportunity to compete at the highest level and to perfect our craft. Moving to 72 holes is the next logical step that strengthens the competition, tests us more fully, and if the growing galleries from last season are any indication, delivers more of what the fans want." So, and again, one thing that I will say, and I gotta play both sides of the fence here. In some ways, it's tough to hear these guys saying some things which seem so contradictory to what they said before,
Right.
where they're praising how much of the league, you know, was the way it was structured, now praising it in another way. In a way, it seems a little bit ingenuine. And where I struggle with that is anything you hear directly from the guys in LIV, you have to immediately think is a little bit biased.
Yep.
Because they are, you know, employed by and paid by the league.
Sure.
It's not like the PGA Tour where they're independent contractors and you can see maybe guys speak out a little bit more.
Yep.
Here, they're contracted, and they, in a way, it almost feels like you're almost contracted to be a mouthpiece. But I'm also not saying that John is lying here. We know he's a competitor. We know it probably, or we can at least surmise, it probably was eating a little bit away at him, the idea or in the inference that their league is not as competitive or that, you know, they're only playing 54 holes.
Yeah.
A guy who's a real competitor is going to want to showcase what he can do. And I think a lot of them were even tired of hearing the old, you know, the old rib that they would hear at the majors be like, oh, how are you going to be able to keep up for 4 rounds?
Yeah.
I think a lot of them are going to be very happy to see that go by the wayside.
It'll shut Brandel up too, probably.
Right.
A little bit. He was very vocal about that. But no, I think I'm just curious if you think that it was a lot of player pushback. I mean, this is the moment of LIV where a lot of the contracts are coming due. So I wonder if they were just like, hey, listen, like, we need to get these points and we're all in on going 72 holes. It probably sounded good in the beginning, but they've been doing it for 3-4 years now.
Yeah.
So it's like, listen, we just add another round and we got.
And of course, the running joke now is that your LIV, it's Roman numerals 54. How are you going to do this?
Right.
But there's other aspects to it. There's 54 players. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So
there you go.
There's other aspects, but I get it. That's what I'm saying. It's going to come with criticism because you're changing a core tenet. But one more, of course, another big face of the league is Bryson DeChambeau. So here's what he had to say about it. He said, everyone wants to see the best players in the world competing against each other, especially in the majors. And for the good of the game, we need a path forward. By moving to 72 holes, LIV Golf is taking a proactive step to align with the historic format recognized globally. This is a fantastic evolution of the LIV Golf product, showing how the league listens and adapts to create the best possible experience. So he right there is saying, like, this is, you know, if you, it doesn't take a genius to read between those lines and say, this is for official World Golf Rankings and giving more pathways into majors. Because although, as we talked about here on the show, there are pathways in, there weren't nearly as many as if they had official World Golf Rankings. So it's showing, it's tipping that cap, but it's also, and this is something I want you guys to weigh in the comments. What do you think, whether this is a strength or a weakness, for them to recognize as a startup? They're saying, like, listen, we're going to make the changes that need to be made in order to get the effective goals we want. Let's say the goal of the players in the league is to get official World Golf Rankings. If they need to make a big core fundamental change to do it, they'll do it. Some people say, hey, good startups do that. Yeah. Good startups pivots.
Right. Yeah.
On the other side, some will say, well, you were very dug in on your core of what makes you different. This is why you're so different. You are who you are, and be unique and be true to yourself. And then by changing that, it's an ingenuine. I think I understand both sides of that argument. I want to hear what you guys have to think. So definitely drop that in the comments below. But that is the debate that's going on right now. Yeah.
I mean, dude, I think it would be tougher to digest if they went with more 100 players in the field. They went off on 1 in 10, same as PGA Tour.
Like if they immediately restructured, everything was the same as what you saw on Tour. I get it.
The fact that it's just one extra round, if anything, it's giving us fans more entertainment. I mean, I mean, I don't. Yeah, I'm all in.
Yeah. Well, listen, like I said, there's a lot more to talk about, including why they made this move more specifically. Does this signify that they're definitely getting official World Golf rankings? And I really want to get into this idea of saying, what does this mean for like not only just the merger, whether the merger happens or not, but golf in general? Because now something that a lot of people have brought up adeptly and smartly is that as this move happens and as LIV makes more and more of these changes to fit into the mold of official World Golf rankings, we're starting to run into where the PGA Tour and LIV are starting to look more similar than they are different.
Yeah,
which makes you then ask, why are they split in the first place?
Right.
We got to dive into that. Let's do a quick break. Let's do a word from our sponsor. We'll get right into it.
All right, guys, it's November, but we are still going. In fact, we played November golf just the other day, and it was a nice day, man. It was like 60, 55 degrees out in Brooklyn.
Any day you're playing golf is a nice day.
It was a good day, but the key, man, we keep talking about this, is the layering. Like, we're just like, safe out there. FootJoy's got everything we need for any weather condition that you can encounter. The mornings are freezing. I'm not going to lie. It's like 35, 40 degrees tee off, and then by the turn or by the midday, it's back up in the 50s. So you're stripping layers. That's why things like the Tempo series, when it's just a little bit warmer, which I had on the other day, to the Hydro series where I had on when we were up at Cascades filming in the freezing wind. I mean, you name it, any type of weather, wind, rain, snow, even if you're brave enough. FootJoy's got you covered. So don't trust your golf gear to anyone else. Trust the best in the game. Trust the latest from FootJoy. Learn more at footjoy.com.
All right, so digging deeper.
Yes.
Why make this move? Why make this move so abruptly? Why make it in general? Like I said, if 54 LIV is one of those core tenets of the league, why make this move? The first thing, as we talked about in those quotes, it tips the hand, it has to be official World Golf Rankings driven. It shows that LIV is after official World Golf Rankings. We've, again, the change in leadership we talked about, where you had a completely different style, where you had Greg Norman withdrawing his application in protest and saying, we don't need you. And this is what we said about, like, Greg had his moment and his reasons, but I think a lot of his contentiousness was a hurdle and a reason why they needed to have that change of leadership. Scott O'Neill comes in. He's a little bit more of a seasoned executive, understanding that business and kind of almost taking a much more of a less in your face, less public facing role and more behind the scenes negotiation. And it just shows, like, this has got to be the reason that they're doing this. With a small caveat, I do still think, and you heard it in some of these quotes from Scott, from John, that if the league is truly growing, and I get it, there are plenty still of critics, haters who are saying no one watches the league and all that types of stuff. I think that those statements are made with a grain of salt, because you have LIV still falling behind the PGA Tour in ratings, but also those comments are made with a little bit of tunnel vision, not realizing how much of this is a global league. We have the great benefit of this podcast reaching a global audience. Read all the comments, and we see how many people outside of the U.S., where we're here recording this, are watching this more. There's more broadcast. It's being seen in more countries. So I think that that's a little bit of a narrow tunnel vision there. But if the reality is true, and putting just a business hat on, if you're now selling the tickets, if you're, having large attendance, if you're having viewership, then adding a fourth round to be more like of a traditional golf event, it's only added benefit of additional revenue, because now you're selling more tickets, you're selling more sponsorship. And think about it, even as you're trying to draw and attract more sponsors, and your competition might be the PGA Tour. If you had a company like Wells Fargo is deciding whether I'm going to sponsor a PGA Tour event or a LIV event, and you're saying, well, I get 3 days over here and I get 4 over here, well, more value with the extra day. All those things have to be weighed in. Yeah,
I mean, do you think that LIV success is still dependent on the way an audience can consume it? Like, is it going to get a channel somewhere? Are we going to see a day where we have PGA Tour on CBS and something else on NBC?
It's a great question.
But here's the problem, I guess, if it's too global, how can you even watch it? How can you watch the Hong Kong? It's nighttime.
No denying it. And that's where I think that as much as we try to draw this comparison of one versus the other, I don't know if LIV is thinking that way, because it wouldn't be the smartest business move to have like a live event in Hong Kong when if it wouldn't be the smartest business move if you're going hard after a US domestic audience to have a Hong Kong event where no one would be watching because it'd be the middle of the night. I truly think that, as much as a lot of us don't want to believe it, their words and their actions show that they are dedicated to growing audiences outside of the US. So we're here saying, hey, we don't watch it, but like, we're just one country. Right? I mean, yes, we are a massively big golf market, and that's shown by the PGA Tour. But LIV might be showing and saying, like, listen, we're not trying to take that from the PGA Tour. Let them be the US league, and let them be the ones who run from the East Coast to the West Coast and running most of their events in their regular prime time, and we'll take on all the international events. Who knows? But I still think like it could be truly a smart business move on that behalf. But then you got to dive into that next question. Is this, and this is the one that I want the most people to weigh in the comments and let me know, because I really can understand both sides of this argument. Is this a sign of strength or weakness, as I mentioned earlier, for LIV Golf? And I look at both sides, and I was trying to go kind of a pros and cons and write them out. And the strength that I see is that I believe that any true good startup should have the guts and the ability to pivot based on what makes the most sense for the growth of the company. They're not established. They're someone who's trying to get a footing, and good companies know how to do that. They pivot. I agree. So I think that shows as a big strength. On the weakness side, like I said, for a long time, and you could say a lot of this was Greg Norman driven and stuff like that, they put out there and tried to show themselves as being differentiated, different, all the ways that we're different from the PGA Tour, all the ways we're a new type of golf. And to then pivot and conform to what has been long historically a standard of golf, of competitive golf, 72 holes, could show a little bit of a sign of weakness, of saying like, we couldn't survive on our own original tenets, and now we have to conform. Yeah, I could see making points on both sides of it. That's why I want to hear what people have to say.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. I'm sure the comments will light up on that. I mean, a lot of people have been thinking about this since it dropped yesterday. And dude, I think it's a good move. Strength-wise, I think it's only going to, like we said before, going to increase the value, giving people an extra round and getting eventually those world ranking points. The players are going to be happy. They're going to re-sign. The business model is going to keep going and going and going. So, I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
It's a lot. And then the last thing that I'll leave you with, and I think this one was so important. I originally, I got to give credit where credit's due to this argument that was made. I originally saw this from Dan Rappaport, and he makes a really strong point. I will say that you always have to kind of look at things with a grain of salt and where it's coming from. Rappaport is now, with Scratch. Scratch is a PGA Tour entity. So for him, you could see how he could kind of sway a little bit in that direction. But he brings up a really good point yesterday on his podcast where he said, we're now getting to a point where the two tours are looking far more similar than they are different. And he kind of broke it down really eloquently, saying how now you look and you've got one league that has these limited field events, lots of talent, high payouts, like really, really large purses, and 72 holes, right? Well, guess what? I could have been describing either LIV or the PGA Tour there.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Now you look at where PGA Tour is moving, and I think you're going to see, I think really soon, you're going to see an announcement for the 2027 schedule for the PGA Tour is going to be dramatically different. I think it's going to end up looking more like LIV's schedule than it looks like its own, in that they're starting to, the waves, the tides are changing towards these signature events.
Yeah.
Right? Much more limited fields. Some of them, no cut events, a lot of signature events, no cut events, with the top tier talent. So smaller fields, big purses, top tier talent, 72 holes. And then on LIV, you have, as they continue to recruit, and I get it, some people say that LIV doesn't have the talent that the PGA Tour does. And, in a lot of ways, there's a lot of truth to that. I still think that the majority, the heavyweight of talent is on the PGA Tour, but there's no denying Bryson DeChambeau. There's no denying, John Rahm. Yeah. All these, there's a laundry list, Neiman. There's a laundry list of great talent over there. And it gets to a point where it's like, wait, if these two tours are starting to look more similar than they are different, then why rip the golf world apart in general?
Yeah.
Why not find a way to all play back together again and bring elements like what LIV is trying to do with some more international events, bring more of those into the fold. I think the big differentiator just remains the team element.
Yeah.
But it's yet to really see that take hold from a fan standpoint. That's highly been criticized, that fans are really not attached to the team element just yet. So who knows? But it is a good point to kind of hang on and see where that progresses, because if LIV continues to make these changes to a more traditional format, then you get to the point be like, well, why break away ever in general?
Yeah,
it's a good point to hold on to. So a big change, a lot to decompress, a lot of, like I said, love and hate, on both sides of it, of saying the opinion. So we want to hear you guys' opinions. Let us know down in the comments below. We will keep a very close eye on this. So subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And as these new news rolls out, we'll be sure to talk about it here. But either way, it's definitely exciting because changes continue to come. And I think it's going to happen on both sides of the fence. So subscribe where you get your podcast, and we'll see you in the next one.